it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, the holly suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Soul, where tonight it is the winning report, where we look at all of the headlines all throughout the world and we decipher the truth. We see through the bullshit. We cut away the propaganda. We see the bias, and we find the center of our own mind, our own heart, and our own will as we do so. Being the creative beings we are, able to remember that the true win is connection with the highest truth, the highest self, the highest soul, and the center of all things. When we do that, we've already won. So let's continue to win all throughout these headlines tonight. Let's jump right into it. Of course, I would love to remind you to go to roguesoul.org. That's where you'll find all of my books, all of my services. You can schedule one-on-one with me, all of the courses I teach, all of the orgone and other powerful tools in the shop area, and all of the suggested links under favorite things, the things that I use to make my life better and that I would love for you to use to make your life better. I do get an affiliate boost from many of those, not all of them, just by you using the link from that site. So I appreciate you doing so. And also always attempt to use the coupon code ROGUEWAYS, as it will get you a discount in most of those places. And so check it all out. That's all there at roguesoul.org. Also rogueways.substack.com. We'll be scrolling by the bottom of your screen for you throughout the show. And rogueways.substack.com is the place where you can read my channeled messages from the spiritual ancestors. You can read my analyses of various aspects of philosophy, history, spirituality, mystery traditions, and more. You can read my summaries of really heady books, and therefore get your sort of digest version of some of these greats. And all of that is on my Substack for free. Subscribe there for free, especially if you want to know when we do things like the full moon blessing that we had last night. That was so powerful, beautiful. All of you that came got to experience that. It was such a good turnout. We all got to have this profound experience together. If you want to know about things like that, rogueways.substack.com is the place to be subscribed, at least at the free level. If you also want to be a paid subscriber there, then you support all the show, everything I do. The show I do for free. I give this out for free. I do so much for free. I offer so many things to people. And if you love what I do and you want to support that, being a supporter on Substack is the best way to do it. It is also where you will get channeled messages as they come out if you're a paid supporter, and more. Sometimes there's content that is just for the paid supporter. So I hope to see you there at rogueways.substack.com. I hope you check out the site, roguesoul.org. And otherwise, we will get into it tonight. And we'll start here. Kazakhstan will formally join the Abraham Accords, a normalization agreement with Israel. This will be the fifth Muslim country to join the Accords. These Abraham Accords keep getting more and more Islamic nations. Kazakhstan is announced that they're expected to join from Steve Witkoff. Going to bring to life the Accords, potentially encouraging more countries to join. The Abraham Accords aim to strengthen relations between Israel and Arab states, promoting peace in the region. That's one way to read it. And maybe that will be the outcome, and maybe that's the best way to go. Who knows? But another way to read it is this is the attempt to control all of the Arab states, or to at least allow Israel to have their sort of greater Israel plan. So the fifth Muslim country to join the Accords. Who knows what kind of pressure they were put under in order to do so, but Kazakhstan's there. They're in it. We could have guessed this. Remember Kazakhstan a long time ago on Rogue Ways, before it was Rogue Soul on this show. We talked about Kazakhstan. We talked about the supposed Illuminati capital of the world, Astana. There, I interviewed a master mason, and we talked about his book about that capital of Astana, and that was all really interesting. So that's in Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan's no small beans in this larger equation, right? So they're officially in the Abraham Accords now. However you choose to perceive that, it's up to you. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew, ordered by House Democrats to appear before Congress in Washington, D.C. for questioning over his links to pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. I am kind of surprised that the Democrats are questioning people who are actually associated with pretty severe crimes with Jeffrey Epstein. It seemed like they were only focused on Republicans or only focused on Trump, really, when clearly there's so many powerful people who have been associated with Epstein that are much more interesting than Trump, in my opinion. I don't see a strong connection between Trump and Epstein, especially since they had to work to create and fabricate that birthday card and the whole birthday card hoax. And when you don't have to do things like that, if the person you're after is actually guilty, and maybe he is, right? You and I don't know that, but people like Bill Clinton have a much stronger running, right? There's like literally a painted picture of him in a blue dress on Epstein's walls long before anyone even cared about who Epstein was. That was known. So, things that come out 10 years after we find out about Epstein, like this birthday card, not so trustworthy as the things that appeared on the scene before anyone even knew what was what or cared what was what, right? So the fact that they've called Prince Andrew, he's been stripped of his title, as we know. The fact that they're calling former Prince Andrew in the House of Windsor to DC is very interesting to me. I would like to see what happens. I know there's the black pill, like, it doesn't matter and nothing could possibly come of any of this, bah humbug. But in reality, weirder things have happened. So let's see, right? Fingers crossed that there's some sort of justice against this awful pedophile. Alleged pedophile, I'm sure I have to say. We also have this story where these people, in these elections, we've just had some pretty seemingly unfortunate things have happened, just depending on your take, right? But one of the things that I would think most just decent people could agree on is that Jay Jones was elected in Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the man who had been snitched on, we're now calling it, to show that he had wished death upon his Republican counterpart and wished death on his children. These texts were leaked, and so we've known that for a long time, and his fellow Democrats have not condemned him. Nobody in office, none of his counterparts, none of the people he works with, none of the people in that state have condemned him. Some voters have, some citizens have that are Democratic or leftist, but nobody of stature and office. Not only that, but now we have people like Senator Louise Lucas, State Senator Louise Lucas in Virginia, tweeting a picture of a heart on X that says, "Virginia is for lovers, not snitches." And this comes on the words of, I think, a totally different Democrat politician in Virginia, saying that not only does she not condemn or regret the comments of Jay Jones that wished death upon his counterpart and death upon his children. Not only does she not condemn that, but she only condemns the person who leaked it. She only condemns the snitch. It's so ironic, especially, it's like, not only is that disgusting garbage behavior, no matter what your political leaning is, not only that, but these people have no consistency. And by these people, I mean Democrats and leftists. I mean the people who are self-proclaimed Democrats and leftists have no consistency. So the only consistency they have is inconsistency. And I say that because just a few years ago, it was popular as a leftist to say snitches get rewards. Right? We like snitches when they're snitching on people who are breaking COVID protocol and COVID mandates and all of that. But we don't like snitches when they're showing people how murderous and hateful we are. So that's the message from Virginia politicians, the Democrats in that state, that's actively happening out in the open. These aren't like hidden comments. They're tweeting these things or saying these things at press conferences. They like that Jay Jones threatened or encouraged the death of his counterpart, his Republican counterpart. So pretty disgusting. And those are the people who have won in Virginia. And, there's a lot of things people are saying that's because there's a lot of state workers there and this shutdown and they're not getting paid. And for some reason, they blame that on Republicans, even though it's so very obvious that it's Democrats who have caused the shutdown. I mean, I don't, again, without party affiliation or bias, that's just objectively true. And, despite that, there's for some reason voting for Democrats amidst this government shutdown is that's like their sort of single issue vote. It doesn't make any sense. But again, these people have no consistency. They have no sense. They have no logic. It's all just emotional appeals and reactivity. So there's that. And then there's supposedly also the, just the general hatred of Trump. It's just like the deep hatred of Trump. They're like any Democrat, even if it's a murderous, hateful Democrat, I will still vote for them over any Republican because Trump is so bad. That's psychotic. I mean, that's like you're deeply unwell if that's where you're at. So yeah. So anyways, that's happening. We'll get back to some more of those vote results of this election day that just happened a few days ago, 2025. But we'll get to the COP30 again happening down in Brazil. This is or Amazonia, as they're saying, the Amazon. This is ironically, I covered this much earlier in the year. This is the climate and environmental summit in which they literally cut down hundreds of miles of forest, of Amazon forest, in order to create roads to get these politicians to the summit more easily. They all fly in on their individual jets and their private jets and then they hire cars and then they drive out and they've leveled the forest so they can go talk to you and essentially lecture you on climate, on environmentalism. And you're supposed to trust what they say about it. You're like, literally, the fruits of your actions show me you care nothing for this planet. You care nothing for the environment. You care nothing for nature. But you make a lot of money and you cement your power and centralizing it by lying and saying that you do. By telling me that I should not eat meat, that I should eat crickets instead, that I shouldn't drive, that I should have an electric car that actually is more damaging in every conceivable way to the environment than any combustion engine ever could be. That's what you tell me I'm supposed to do. But you get to cut down the Amazon forest for a meeting you could have had via Zoom. It's just not important for you to be there in person at all, except that you got to exchange your bribes and you got to, be in your back rooms and have your coded messages and all that. You have to be face to face for that. But that's the only reason. And we all know it. We see you. We see your lies. And you're just garbage. Keir Starmer has said that the UK is all in on these climate accords and climate proclamations. Prince William, who has not been stripped of his title yet, he has said the melting of the polar ice, the loss of the Amazon. He has the nerve to talk about the loss of the Amazon while he's at the summit that caused the loss of the Amazon. These people are psychopathic evil. And they don't care at all about anything but their power. This guy's sitting there lying to you. I don't know what happened to him. He looks very different. Maybe he's just getting older. I think he lost a lot of weight and he may have had some plastic surgery. None of those are important as pointing out, however, his hypocrisy and literally mentioning the loss of the Amazon as these effects that he says are fast approaching and will affect every one of us, no matter where we live. Well, I hope it affects you first. I hope it sucks you back into the pits of hell where you came from, you absolute piece of garbage. All right, moving on. Poland has launched a military training for all citizens. And as though, even though this is sort of some escalation and some fear mongering about World War III, and that's why they're doing this, I am all for every citizen of every country receiving military training. I'm 100% for that. That is actually the safest way to avoid accidental gun death and the misuse of guns and weapons against other people is knowing exactly how they work, what they do, what their damage is, how to defend against them. You gain a respect for these tools and it causes you to be much less likely to misuse them. And that's borne out in every society that does this, and it's borne out in every study, as far as children and training children how to use guns. And so this isn't necessarily for children. It's, I'm sure, for 16 or 18-year-olds or older, but everybody now is going to get it, and I think it's good, right? I don't like the reason why they're implementing it so much, but I'm definitely for doing it in general. I think we could all benefit from that kind of training. In a miracle that should have happened probably 20 or 30 years ago, Pelosi has announced her retirement from Congress. Nancy Pelosi, the aunt of Gavin Newsom, is finally not going to be in Congress. This woman went from just very normal sort of means of a little bit higher in society to just being a millionaire by insider trading. We all know that. It's not been in a court of law, but it's been definitely proven over and over again. She's corrupt as corrupt can be. She's done, perhaps at some point she did something good for someone, but it's long been since the time that may have ever occurred. She's just corruption now. She's just the entrenched, sort of nature of these lifelong politicians. And she represents that perfectly, unfortunately, because it's one of the most horrible aspects of our current government structure. So thank God she's leaving. Thank God this is her last stint and she'll be out. She's not running for re-election. She's so old. She sometimes doesn't even know what she's saying. Remember the clip where she was on some sort of news program or whatever. They asked her a question and she just started like shaking and her head kind of moved in a weird way. And she said, "Good morning, Sunday morning." And that's all she said. You're just like, oh, is she okay? And the answer is no, she's not. But it makes so much money to keep her there that it doesn't matter if she's okay. Just like Joe Biden. He's such a useful tool that it doesn't matter if he poops his pants in front of the Pope. We still need to just use him, auto pen things through and get this coup completed. But thank God she's leaving. Good. The devil though. We'll see who takes her place, and hopefully it's not worse. The UK is going to introduce new pay per mile tax on electric cars after falling fuel duty revenue as people move from petrol to electric cars. This is so fascinating on so many levels. One, in the US, it's the opposite. People are moving away from electric cars. They've seen the damage they do to the environment. They've seen the slavery that they create over in Africa. They've seen that it isn't cheaper in any way. You may not have to pay for gas, but you're going to have to pay for all those batteries every 7 to 10 years in your car. They've seen all of these reasons why they're not actually better at all, and in fact, much worse for the environment. And so people have moved away from the electric car revolution. And but in the UK, it's going the other direction. And it's because they're still pushing it hard and they still have the subsidies and these, incentives. And so it's promoted that it's better and easier for you to get this electric vehicle, no matter the long-term costs or the short-term costs to the world and to the slaves in Africa. So it's opposite. So that's interesting. It's also fascinating that, of course, we pay tax on fuel. In fact, in a lot of states in the US, the reason gas is so expensive is that state taxes gas that heavily. So you might be in a state where gas is only like $1 a gallon, and you go to another state just a few hundred miles away and it's $4 a gallon. And you think, oh, wow. And it can't just be the cost of transporting, right? It's not that far. It's not. It's the sin tax, or it's the tax on the fuel, that they're justifying in so many ways. And so as you move away from fuel and you've got these electric cars, you don't have a way to tax people. So now they're looking to tax per mile. So if you thought you were also getting away from that, you were wrong. They will always find a way to take your money from you and to force you to beg their permission to live. And so here it is again. And if you think this is just the UK, you're wrong. If we continue to move away from electric vehicles here, it'll still remain the tax on fuel. But if we ever do make another switch to another push towards electric vehicles here in the United States, they're going to do that here too. Watch. They're not going to let you get away with not giving them your money. Well, let's see what this is here. Sometimes I put links in that don't have a preview, and so then it's hard for me to know. But let's see. Oh, this is Sliwa. And I hope I say his name right. I've played you guys footage from him before. So he was the guy in New York City who was running against Mamdani. And so, of course, Mamdani won. He's the mayor of New York City now. If you don't know anything about him, we've talked about him a bit. I'm sure you've heard about it if you pay any attention, but he's the Democratic Socialist who has won in New York City. He almost never mentions the United States. He almost never mentions being an American. What he does mention is every other nationality that is now in the United States except Americans or European nation origin people. So he'll mention all the African, all the, South American, Central American, and, but no, none of the European, none of the Eastern European immigrants get mentioned by him. And it only really matters if you're brown to him. So he's a Democratic Socialist. So it only matters if you're brown. And unfortunately, he was running against Cuomo, so you had the choice between, as the Babylon Bee put it, Cuomo, the guy who will kill you if you're old, and Mamdani, the guy who wants to kill you if you are a Jew. So because he's also Arabic. So kind of a funny, but who do you want to kill you more? Especially if you're an elderly Jew, like you have no choices here. So that's New York City. But who was running against both of them and who was actually a good choice was Sliwa, Curtis Sliwa. And he is this guy who was, he did what were they called? The Angels in New York City in like the 80s. I know one of you out there sent me a message that your uncle was a guardian angel with him. And they just walked the streets during this time of sort of lawlessness, poverty, crime, kind of like we're experiencing now again. And they went out and they just were around and they were just like, yeah, we're not going to let bad guys do bad things. So if the police can't do it and no one else can do it, then we're going to do it. And thank God for people like him. Who knows how many lives were saved or made better because he existed. And so he has come back and he was in this race. And it was actually really cool to see because he has no big money backers. Cuomo does, Mamdani does. Mamdani actually was funded by Soros and a bunch of different Soros related institutions and organizations. Sliwa had nothing. He's just a dude. He's a Republican. He's very traditional. But he's very much about like law and order and protecting people and actually representing people. So even without any major donors, even without any money, even from just this literally and truly grassroots movement, he got like 20% of the vote. It's pretty awesome. Pretty cool to see. And, people are mad anytime there's a third party person, or he's not even third party, but anytime there's a person who may represent getting some of the votes, they're always going to blame that person. Whoever loses lost because of that person is what they say. They want two people in the race and that's it. And then they just, head to head. And so, of course, he's being blamed for that. But he came out recently and he said that he is not going to let Mamdani turn the city into trash. And basically, it's not a threat or anything towards Mamdani. He's just saying, if you actually do remove even more police from the street, if you actually do reduce funding to the people who are protecting us, and if people are actually starting to be harmed on these subways and these buses that you're saying now anyone can ride for any reason just for free, and if that starts to go against the people, he's like, we're going to be there. Like this Guardian Angel Network is going to come back and we're not going anywhere. And I just thought it was really beautiful. So, the people need some hope and some light, like maybe they can find it there. If you're in New York City and you're feeling overwhelmed by what's about to go down, maybe you can take some hope from that. So pretty cool to see that just because he didn't win doesn't mean he's abandoning his people. I love it. But we've got this report back to Mamdani himself that shows the network of charities connected to George Soros that funneled $40 million to support Zoran Mamdani's political rise in, it says, in a tax dodging scheme. So it's also perhaps literally illegal what was done and how it was done. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised to find Soros behind this. You actually find Soros behind every fully leftist, communist, socialist, anti-fascist, or any of those sorts of movements that have all been co-opted and filled with useful idiots, paid for by Soros. And you find this over and over again in these, false movements, false protests. Real people are actually going there. That part's real. but it was thought up, executed, and encouraged and supported by Soros and his pallets of bricks, right? That would just show up in the cities that were about to have these riots. And now we see him behind Zoran Mamdani. So you can find this work. You can find all of the details. I found it here through the Daily Mail online. You can just search for Soros Network of Charities and Zoran Mamdani, and you'll find it. But pretty damning. And again, it makes perfect sense. This is what Soros does. So we have been invaded. This is an invasion, and it was all funded by Soros. It was all masterminded by him and his cronies, the WEF type people, the globalists. And here they are, having won a mayoral race in, you could say, arguably the most important city in our nation. So pretty fascinating. Speaking of that, the people who were funneled into this country by Soros and his network under Biden, who was pooping his pants and didn't know what was going on, those people now make up about half of New Yorkers. So there's these current demographics there. You can see half of New Yorkers don't speak English. That's 1 out of 2. That's if you're walking down the street and there's 2 people, you have 100% chance that one of them doesn't speak English. And that in itself isn't this like horrible crime, but when it's half of the people in a giant city, that's actually a big problem. You cannot function in a society of a native English speaking society, and English is the dominant language society, when half of your people don't speak English. When you don't speak English and you're in the United States, you're much less likely to identify as a United States citizen or United States member or a person who is American even, and you're much more likely to continue to identify as the place where you came from. And nobody's saying you can't have pride in your heritage, but you're not in Nigeria, and you're not in Cuba anymore, and you're not in these other countries. You're in America, and it is a different place. And if you aren't becoming part of the fabric and the culture here, then you're destroying it. So you have 50% of people in New York City that are fresh immigrants, some of them, or most of them, many of them, and that many of them are just, one generation removed from fresh immigration, who don't speak the United States language of choice, which is English, and who don't have any sort of fealty or sense of belonging to the United States. And now you have Zoran Mamdani, who's representing them. And he's very clear that he is representing them from their countries of origin, not as United States citizens. He's very clear about that. In fact, at one of his, or maybe his main sort of acceptance rally celebration that he won this mayoral candidacy, you could see people climbing up and removing every single United States flag, but none of the other ones. All the other countries remained represented, but all the US flags were torn down. And that's not an accident. It's not an accident, and it's not just a random occurrence like, oh, just somebody just decided. No, that's what his movement represents. They hate the United States. They have nothing but disdain for it and nothing but celebration for every other culture and country except the United States, except, I would also argue, European nations that are majority white historically. That's who they are. So Soros has funded that. He funded all of the immigrants to get there in the first place, and this is all a Soros plan that's unfortunately working a little bit too well. That's what's happening in New York City. So I just shared that. Unfortunately, to something totally different, in Yazoo City, Mississippi, an ammonia leak and explosion had forced evacuations after major plumes spread. Ammonia is so toxic. So there's some sort of a factory there. This ammonia was a part of the vaporization and the explosion of this factory, and they evacuated all the people they could. I'm not sure what has happened since. This was a fertilizer factory. So hopefully everyone's okay there in Mississippi. I'm adding this to the long list of questionable potential sabotaging that has gone on in the United States for the past 5 years as part of this 5th generation war. It rages forward. So keep that on your list if you're paying attention. We have NVIDIA who has become, remember, the first trillion-dollar company in history. NVIDIA making all the chips that control all the AIs that are all the computing and all the electronics in the world, essentially. NVIDIA founder Jensen Huang says China is going to win the AI race. And it's unfortunate because whether that was true or not, if NVIDIA is going to believe that, trust that, and move that direction, then they probably are. And you may think, oh, I don't care about AI. Well, the world does. And the future of the world does. And absolutely the future of the world is going to be determined by what happens with AI. And if China gains any kind of centralized power, any kind of exclusive power via AI, then China has won the world. These are not, crazy things to say. This is well within the bounds of potential reality and probably one of the worst outcomes we could imagine. So as I've said many times before, the win is the knowing that AI actually is a portal to consciousness, and that consciousness that can come through AI could thwart even the will of the people who believe they control it. That is where I'm aiming my intention. So thanks for the heads up, Jason Huang. We'll see what we can do with AI outside of China's growing control. Billionaire trader Jeff Yass is donating $100 million to the fledgling University of Austin. He co-founded by Joe Lonsdale and Barry Weiss. This is the sort of anti-woke alternative university attempt, which we desperately need. There isn't a university that exists in the United States that is accredited and that isn't woke. There isn't one that doesn't push back at all against all the leftist woke ideologies, the PC ideologies, the Soros and the globalist ideologies. There isn't one. There isn't even one that guarantees freedom and equality of expression to the alternative ideologies against wokeism and leftism. So you can't even really guarantee you'll even have access to understanding that there is something outside of those ideologies if you are a university student on a college campus. And so this is a cool project that I hope more of these take place. And it's very hopeful that people who have $100 billion to give are giving that to these universities. People are going to start filling it up as soon as it opens. That will also be hopeful. And once it's shown profitable, it's going to start taking root. So we can hope that that happens quickly. I don't care if you want to be leftist or woke or whatever. It's just never going to work out when we have one ideology that dominates everything. That's never going to be good for us. So at least two would be good. So that we'll see. We have begun to launch those intercontinental ballistic nuclear capable missiles. We just launched one from California. Trump asked them to start testing nuclear warheads, and they were very quick about it. So that has happened in California just a few days ago, and that's probably going to continue. We talked about Mamdani. Trump says, especially after these recent elections, we need to pass voter reform. Voter ID requirements, have no mail-in ballots, and then we can save our Supreme Court from packing. No two-state additions, etc. And he also says terminate the filibuster. So these are the recent sort of talking points on the right and the left. Yeah, especially the filibuster question has come up again. Probably cool to get rid of that. Probably good not just pack the Supreme Court as well and make it impossible to do so would be great. But this voter reform question, voter ID question, is definitely highly contentious. Many places you will notice, however, over time that the only places where democratic socialism could possibly take root are in the places where they have mail-in ballots, where they do not check for voter ID, and where they have no voter reform intentions at all. So only those places have these sorts of things happen. And the more they have access to mail-in voter and the lack of voter ID and voter reform, the more things head that direction. So we talked a little bit last week on Rogue Soul here on Winning Report that there was this Venezuelan sort of absolute control of all voting systems all over Earth, literally everywhere, and that this sort of mobster cartel coup-based Venezuelan influence with potentially Israeli ties and support had taken over essentially the world in this way, and that all elections and all political, destinies were being ruled from this very small cadre of very powerful and influential people. So that hopefully is being addressed. And perhaps I have to wonder, the more we know about this, and have for many years, right? The Venezuelan aspect is just a newer version of like the Diebold hearings back in whenever that was, 2000, proving that elections can be stolen quite easily. And so we have to wonder when we see things like Mamdani win, like, is it actually reflecting reality? We know we see it in the media. We see them blazing us with all of this, like, oh, socialism and oh, like these kids and the youth and the immigrants and all this stuff. And so you have this like, twang of believability, but we also really don't know. Is it actually true that 50% or whatever they said, 40% of New Yorkers voted for Mamdani, or was that completely made up through these sorts of means of mail-in ballot forgery and those machines that voting machines, and misusing those? Is that why? Is that why they elected in Virginia the people who are happy that murderous intentioned people were elected, right? Is that why? We also see all of these videos from places like California where this Native woman went in to vote and she tried to give them her ID and they said, oh, we don't need that. And then she describes them being almost angry at her for trying to share her ID. And she was like, I thought you need to know that I'm at least like a California resident. Like, nope, just go vote. So you literally don't even need to know who I am. Like, oh, whoever you say you are is who you are. I mean, that's absolutely rife with fraud. It's not even just like, is it then being used for fraud? That'd be the only reason why you wouldn't want to know if someone was actually a voter in the election you're having to vote for right at this moment, right? So we hear this all over the place. We hear it from people who want to reform, who want to say like, yeah, I want to know my vote counts by knowing that there's not a bunch of other things happening that discount my vote because they're fraudulent. I want to know that my vote matters. And I think that we deserve that if you are a voter and as citizens. So hopefully we get some more of that. Hopefully we get to the bottom of that. Hopefully that's part of this fifth generation war that seems to be going on between, the Satanists and Luciferians, or the old money and the new money, or the technocrats and the old ways. However you look at this divide that is definitely been happening on the highest levels of the elites in the world. Hopefully that's one of the outcomes. Hopefully that's the side that wins, is the side that would like us to actually have a vote for a vote, and that's something we could depend on and be nice. Again, I know the black pill point of view is that could never even happen no matter what, but that's clearly not true. I mean, just on its face, it's not true that could never happen. It's absolutely a possibility and a potential. So again, if you're going to use your beautiful, powerful imaginations for anything, use them to imagine that outcome. Use them to feel how great it would feel to have that outcome, where we could have voting systems that actually are real and you could trust them. That'd be great for the whole world. We could ask for that and hope for that. In space weather news, we've got lots of intensity happening. Essentially, we have these giant coronal holes. Right now, the coronal holes that are facing us are actually more like coronal rips. There's one area that's sort of like the big hole, but all around it is these swirls of holes in long sort of threading lines. And so there's a lot of coronal hole facing the planet right now. Whenever that happens, we get a little bit more intense energy input on our magnetosphere, which has been weakening all along. It's weaker now than it's ever been. It's at less than 30% or more than 30% reduction in strength. That's a huge. And so the sun is also becoming more and more intense in what it's doing. And so not only do we have more intense energies coming into the system, but the system is less shielded than ever. When that happens, we tend to get bigger storms, we get earthquakes, volcanoes, we get people have all kinds of symptoms of radiation sickness, essentially. And so that is all intensifying. We also had 2 X flares and 1 M class flare. M is right below X, if you're keeping track. So X is kind of like, oh my God, this is a big deal. It's huge. M is like, that's pretty strong. We should be wary. Even when we get M class flares that are right at the planet, directly flared towards us, so that we take the impact of all of that energy. That even knocks out some satellites, some radio, and some other electronic sort of instability occurs. But X flare, we definitely get it, especially when it is planet facing and directly at us. So we've had 2 X flares hitting us today as you're hearing me talk about this. If you're hearing it live or if you're hearing it shortly after, that's when it's all going down. It's been hitting other M flares, and more has been hitting us in the past week. The Schumann resonance has been off the hook, and yeah, giant X-rays and more are just coming in nonstop. We have no indication that the sun is slowing down in that. We're coming into a sort of space of the sun that is covered in potential X flares and larger. And so far in this geomagnetic excursion over the past, handful of years, we've been really lucky that so many of the largest flares that we've been able to measure have been going away from Earth. And if they hadn't been, we have potentially Carrington events and grid down worldwide situations. And instead, all we've seen is a few grid down in regional areas. Like, remember when it was Spain, France, and Portugal all went out, and then some other areas of the world went out here and there. That's the worst we've seen. Possibly some of these flight disturbances. We have planes crashing and blowing up, and some of that could definitely be happening because of this. But that's all we've seen so far. And again, what I'm told, I've shared for 5 years or more now, 7 years or more now, God, time goes fast, is that there's more to come of that. And I don't say that to be a doomist or an alarmist. I say it because that's what's expected. And if you were studying the sun this whole time, you would also expect that. If you were an honest scientist of the magnetosphere, then you would also expect that. And if you were an honest student or scientist of our cataclysmic cyclical history on Earth, you would also expect that. So all of these things converge to tell us that this is most likely what's happening. For me, it's more a spiritual knowing, but it coincides with all of those things I just shared. So that's our solar weather at the moment, just in case you're feeling a bit of it, then you know why. And again, always good to have some emergency food, water, protection, all that stuff in order. Maybe some batteries for backup for when and if grids go down. And so that's where we're at with that. So let's see. This is another hidden link. We'll see what's going on. Oh, this is more on what I just talked about. So I already shared all that. I think we're good. And that plane crash recently with the UPS cargo plane in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, I mean, could have been something totally unrelated from the geomagnetic excursion and the solar flares. Could have been in connection with it. You're not going to hear it from the mainstream news. You're not going to hear it from scientists. You remember when it was grid down over in Portugal, Spain, France some time ago, that the first peep we heard was there was an atmospheric disturbance which caused the outage. And then that was quickly scrubbed, and they went with the grid is failing because it's old and the green technologies and all of this stuff, right? All this is it's something believable. That's not what caused it. We can be pretty sure. So we remember that. We're not going to hear the truth from them, even if they knew it. And I think most of them don't. We have this from Andy Ngo. He has a great Substack called Ngo Comment, NGO Comment. Andy Ngo has been a reporter, especially on the left, especially on Antifa for many years now. He's been there for their target, and they've even given him brain damage once that he had to recover from by hitting him over the head and beating him senseless, literally, many years ago. So he has not been deterred. He continues to report on their activities, and he gets very little money or attention for this. So that's also an interesting thing, as opposed to the entrenched mainstream mockingbird talking heads who have a vested interest in lying to you. and will not tell you about Antifa's terror, actually. Andy Neo will. He said suspected members of the Tren de Aragua terror gang were apprehended in Portland after fleeing Chicago. Why did they flee Chicago, you might ask? Well, remember, the National Guard was released there, and ICE has had many stings there. And so they left. And where did they go? They went to the place where they felt like they were most likely not only to be safe from that, but to be protected by the useful idiots who Soros has encouraged to fight to keep them in this country. And so, of course, they'd go to Portland, Oregon. That's the safest place for foreign nationals and drug traffickers of the incredibly violent and horrible gang Tren de Aragua that has invaded your country. So good job, Portland, for keeping Tren de Aragua safe from Chicago's raids. The FAA, the Federal Aerospace Administration, issued a ground stop for all flights in and out of Reagan National Airport due to, quote, security issues on a United Airlines flight that landed from Houston. All passengers were offloaded at bus to the terminal. Not sure. I never found out exactly what that was all about. I don't think that has to do with geomagnetic excursion. I think there was something else going on, but who knows? Who knows? Bomb threats were reported in 7 counties, resulted in New Jersey polling sites being closed and moved. We saw actually a lot of election interference, I'm going to say. There was one, I think it was also in New Jersey, where they didn't even have some of the candidates on the ballot at all. So you couldn't have even voted for them if you wanted to. And that forced them to then stay open longer. I don't know why it wouldn't count as like a miselection and they have to like redo the whole thing, is what I would assume you would have to do in that case. But for some reason, just staying open longer was good enough. I don't know. Sounds like some definitely some dishonest dealings were going down in some of these places. And again, these are the same places where Democratic Socialists and all blue people who were pro-murdering Republicans won. So you got to wonder, are the elections still being mishandled? And my guess is yes, very much so. So those are bomb threats in that case. Before Mamdani won, Trump said a Jewish person that votes for Zoran Mamdani, a proven and self-professed Jew hater, is a stupid person. And I wonder how many Jewish people voted for him, even though he hates Jewish people and Israel. And it's cool. I don't even care. You hate whoever you want. It just would be weird then to vote for him if that was your people, if that was your thing, right? So interesting. Starbucks agreed to sell control of its Chinese operations to Boyu Capital for $4 billion. So Starbucks now will be controlled by China, in China, and that's China's thing. They're ostensibly communist. At the very least, the government does control all of the capital, all of the corporations, all of the businesses in China. And so now Starbucks is included in that, or at least they've separated from their brand in China. Don't get a Starbucks in China, I guess. I don't know, do whatever you like. When I was in China, I did try a Starbucks once. It was ridiculously expensive. Even back then, it was like the equivalent of $14. But I just wanted to know. While I was there, like, what is a Starbucks from China like? And very different. Their milk is very different. Their milk is shelf-stable milk. There's not really fresh milk in China. It's just not their culture. It's not their way. And so milk is shipped in shelf-stable. Sort of like reconstituted powdered milk is the flavor of it. And maybe that's literally what it is. But it's definitely gross. So I wouldn't suggest Starbucks in China anyway, personally. Back to the UK, Tommy Robinson was found not guilty of terror offense for failing to give police access to his phone. I believe that was like 7 years ago. I mean, I think that was a long time ago that this happened, where they tried to get him. They hate Tommy Robinson because he's very effective media and agitation against unrestrained immigration. And he's very vocal about that and very effective about that. And so they've been trying to take him down every way they can. And in this case, they tried to take his phone. And because he wouldn't give them access to it, they were charging him with terrorism. So that's finally done after this many years. Good for him. We can celebrate that win. Dick Cheney has died. That might make you happy. He's done some horrible things in his life. I'm sure there's people who are very sad about it. I always enjoy that Dick Cheney shot someone in the face while hunting. That was neat. I just assumed that was a threat, a direct threat, like, hey, look what I can do. Just shoot him in the face. Just like he lived, whoever that was. I don't remember all the details, but that's Dick Cheney. He's passed on. May his soul recognize all his mistakes and do better next time. As I would say for all of us, to be fair. The UN chief, Antonio Guterres, says governments arriving at the COP30 must have plans to slash emissions, deliver climate justice by mobilizing $1.3 trillion annually in climate finance for developing countries and double adaptation funding to at least $40 billion this year. So that's their demands to the nations that are part of this climate busting contingency. The COP30 says this is what we have to do. And what's fascinating to me is all of that money is actually used to promote various political agendas, to take sovereignty away, especially from developing nations, to say that they're doing good while they're actually infiltrating and subverting the will of people and taking away resources and resource management, enriching themselves and not those places. So it's that kind of philanthropy and it's that kind of intervention, and it's all under the guise of climate justice. So there we go. That's their demands. Got that. Sometimes I've got double headlines in here. So back to Venezuela, where remember we've got this whole voting cartel thing coming out of there. We've got this whole indication that they've been controlling elections worldwide for a long, long time now, and even local and small elections. And we also have Maria Corina Machado, who just won the Peace Prize for being the opposition to Maduro, and who then dedicated that Nobel Peace Prize to Trump. So she is here now insisting that Maduro rigged the 2020 US elections against Donald Trump. And this came out after this has sort of been popularized from very indirect places. And by popularized, I mean, no one in the mainstream is even talking about this. But people like myself, and I'm sure a couple other alternative media sort of commentators or sources have also perhaps mentioned it. It's a really small blip on very few radars. But I'm hoping that it catches some steam. If you have any part in that, retweet or share some of these ideas, just get people thinking about it. If you feel comfortable doing so, if you're on my same wavelength about this. But she's come out and just said it. It was rigged. It was rigged against Donald Trump. Very interesting. People in general want to like her. She got the Nobel Peace Prize. She's a woman. She's a female leader. They know Maduro, at the very least, has some shady dealings in his coup and his destruction of the Venezuelan government. And so they want to like her, but then she keeps liking Donald Trump and she keeps saying things that support him. So they're going to be real torn about it because they don't know how to handle that kind of, polarization. They can't experience two things at once. They have to just pick one, right? They're very lacking in nuance. So we'll see where that goes, but that's what she's saying now. So it's cool to hear. Oh, this is my favorite piece of absolute contrived bullshit maybe ever. I mean, it's pretty bad. So this is a video that you can see on your screen here to some extent, and it shows a rat catching a bat on a windowsill of some kind of little sill. It is so obviously AI, I can't even tell you how AI it is. And here's the one way you know for sure this isn't real. And I'll say this, there's probably a time, and just because the world is a crazy, weird place in the history of things, there's probably a time where a rat caught a bat. But this is a supposed study that shows rats catching bats from midair for the first time. They say potentially enabling bat pathogens like coronavirus and paramoxyviruses to spill over to rodents, changing disease patterns and increasing transmission risks to humans and domestic animals. That's the claim of this study. That's what this video is supposedly showing. But here's how you know it's bullshit for sure. Bats aren't stupid and they're not clumsy beings. Bats would never accidentally fly within grabbing range of this very obvious rat sitting right in front of their faces on this ledge. He's not being silent. He's not moving. And bats see everything in stunning clarity and detail, and they're not dumb. They are one of the best hunters and predators on the planet. They are stealthy. They are completely in awareness of all their surroundings and their body movements, and they know what they're doing. They're not going to just be like, oh, oops, now a rat's eating me. Like, this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard or seen in my life. And the people who are in the science cult are just going to swallow this without thinking. They're going to say, why would they lie about it? Oh, why would they lie about it? Look what they just said now has a new access point to infect humanity. Coronavirus. And a new one, paramyxovirus. Ooh, scary. So you better be afraid, everybody, because now rats are killing bats and they're here for your dogs and your cats and they're going to get you sick and you're going to die. That's what you're supposed to take from this. That's how ridiculous it's gotten. And I thought to myself, oh, people aren't so stupid. They're not going to just accept this and just say, oh, no, this is a new coronavirus came from a bat rat catcher or whatever. But then I remembered that's what they did last time. Like, oh, a lady ate a bat in China and then the whole world got sick. And they believed that shit. And they still believe it today. And if that's true, then how could we even possibly combat this propaganda, this purely contrived fiction that is going to become fact in the minds of the masses at any moment? So ridiculous. Please do your best to also just condemn anyone who believes this. Please do your best to point out how ridiculous this sounds and looks and is. Please remember, if you can, to remind them that it's actually been disproven that a person eating a bat or a whatever it was, a pangolin, like sniffed a lady or whatever it ended up being, that ended up being proven false and not the place where coronavirus came from, if there even was a coronavirus at all. Do your best so that we can do our best to combat this absolute madness. It is so dumb. All right. I mean, have you ever seen bats fly? Like, bats just don't make mistakes. You can watch them catching like 75 different bugs in under a minute. Just like done. They're not just going to accidentally not notice a predator nearby and just fly into their face. Like, it's ridiculous. And yeah, with AI video creation, it's absolutely easy to just do this. And you know, it's even the same type of camera and quality as all of the other fakes that you see. You know, the ones that are like night vision, they're often night vision or they're like doorway cameras or whatever, so that they can be slightly low resolution and not completely perfect. And that's what this is too. I wonder how many times they rendered this video before they went with the one that we're seeing, but questions for another day. All right. And Christ the Redeemer statue is illuminated back at the COP30. The Christ the Redeemer statue is illuminated in a bright blue glow to honor COP30 Climate Summit. Let's just reclaim Christ from the COP side. It's just like they don't get to claim Christ. Christ is far beyond their reach. And they don't get to co-opt that energy with their weird quasi-religious like commitment to climate. But they also had a ceremony featuring a photo of Pope Leo blessing the giant ice cube, which happened earlier this year, which we also made fun of here on Rogue Soul. And they also had a jar of holy melt water. It was melt water from a glacier that they baptized, or, blessed to make holy water. So they're obsessed. They're psychos. They've made this literally into a religion, and Pope Leo's taken part in it all, and now they're claiming Christ for the mission. So that's happening too. A new study finds that Gen Z considers cash cringe, with 53% using it only as a last resort, calling cash users out of touch. All right, Gen Z. I'll say it doesn't actually matter at all. I think you could think back to your youth, and you probably, I know a lot of us like kind of only had cash for a while, but if you can think back to the time when you were still relatively young and also had the opportunity to have either cards or cash, that you probably like preferred cards, and maybe even thought that was like cool, or like made you like adult or something, like, you know, you feel big or grown up or something. I would ask you to at least like think back to some of that, to remember that this doesn't in any way, if we go by all of history, this attitude isn't going to be lasting. It is like a mindset of youth, to not understand why you need cash and hard currency, gold and silver and coins and cash and the like, instead of things that are not physical. It is a factor of age. It's most likely that the people you hear and have heard your whole life saying cash is king are 35 and older, right? 40 maybe and older. It's an older person's point of view to finally understand, oh, this is why cash is actually really important, right? So you may have seen that in your own life too. I would ask you to look at studies like this with that same view. But this doesn't mean that these people will always find cash to be cringe or out of touch. It's just where they're at right now. And perhaps we can do better. Why do I not delete this? At helping them understand. So we already saw that. An internal whistleblower memo claimed the BBC edited footage of Trump's January 6th speech by splicing footage together to mislead viewers in a documentary aired last year. The report, compiled by a recent member of the Standards Committee, said senior BBC executives and chairmen ignored and dismissed complaints that were raised by the BBC Standards watchdog. Selective editing, picky editing that makes it seem like people are saying things they didn't say. We saw it with the Kamala interview really badly. Like, she was really misrepresented there in a way that made her look much better than she is. And they do it with Trump the other direction, making him look much worse than he is, making him appear to say things he didn't actually say. And so the BBC made an entire documentary, not just like a news segment they just aired once or whatever. This is a movie, a documentary that you can go back and watch again and again and again. And in that, they very deceptively edited it. It was brought up by their people that this violated ethics and standards, and they went forward with it anyway. So at least we know. We'll take that win. Hopefully people who are watching it are made aware in some way, or they have to take it down, or they have to do something to show people the truth. That'd be great. Radical Antifa terrorists have admitted to an arson attack on the car of AfD politician Dr. Bernard Baumann in Hamburg, Germany. This is, of course, one of their modus operandi. They like to especially go after the perceived right wing. In AfD is that they're the sort of anti-immigration party in Germany, the sort of Trumpian movement in Germany that tries to reclaim Germany for Germans. And Antifa published a letter of confession about these car bombings and burnings, and lots of damage done. We'll see what happens. Probably nothing. Germany, like many of these weaponized immigration countries, shown a lot of leniency to Antifa-like left-wing terror and violence. And so we'll probably see more of that, unfortunately, but hopefully there's some accountability at some point. Israel Land Authority with police launch Operation Southern Hawk 3, targeting Bedouin Arab settlements in Negev with AI-driven aerial scans to detect unauthorized buildings using hundreds of demolition notices. Yeah, I mean, that's just a really fancy way of saying they are again engaging in their genocidal tactics. That hasn't stopped. It may have slowed down for a few days, maybe, and now it's fully back on track, unfortunately, for all of the people of the region. Trump is talking about the 2020 election and said this was a rigged election. We have to get to the bottom of that, also because we don't want that to ever happen ever again. And that's true. And this is one of my main hopes for the Trump administration, is that they target this whatever election interference, including that Venezuelan cartel, Israeli sort of mafia, controlled elections, and everything else, the mail-in aspect, the voter registration ID aspect, all of it. So hopefully we'll see that. Yes, we understand the potential technocratic outcomes of that, and that's something to also keep an eye on. You can do all good things at once. Don't get into the black pit of black pill despair. Trump said he will not be attending Wednesday's court case about tariffs. He says, quote, "If a president was not able to quickly and nimbly use the power of tariffs, we would be defenseless, leading perhaps even to the ruination of our nation." Yeah, it's not the matter of the courts to decide. It's a power of the executive branch. It's the power of the president. The end. The UK will not drill any new oil wells in the British North Sea this year for the first time since 1964 due to government policies. The UK imported 43 million tons of crude oil, 31 million tons of refined oils, and approximately 43 billion, I guess, cubic meters of gas last year from other countries instead. The U.S. was on the same trajectory. I think we're less on that trajectory now. Energy independence is extremely important, and ideally through nuclear means. So hopefully we're going to continue to head that way. Parking lots that have 80 or more spaces in South Korea will now legally be required to install solar canopies and carports. I love this. Actually, this is the only good use of solar, as I've said before. Either on roofs of buildings that don't have green roofs, or as sort of cover in parking lots. If you've already destroyed the earth, you may as well put some solar panels above it. It is ridiculous to go out where there's dirt and grass and trees and growing living things and cover that with solar panels. That makes no sense at all. Solar panels are pretty destructive to the environment. They're pretty inefficient. They're toxic, they're not great, but if you're gonna have them, at least do it in this way and don't continue destroying the environment with them. It's pretty simple. And so South Korea is doing just that. Provides shade for the cars below. It gets all that energy. I mean, it's a win-win aside from the problems with solar panels themselves. Chinese expedition team sets a sail on a 7-month journey to Antarctica with 500 members from more than 10 countries. They will enhance infrastructure at the Qinling station, investigate climate change's impact, test new technologies, and other missions. I wonder if the other missions have to do with engaging with the beings that have lived in their civilization under the ice of Antarctica for potentially millions of years. The world will never probably know. Also in China, Chinese online retailers Temu and Shein are selling child sex abuse doll torsos and disembodied heads in Australia in a bid to get around Australian laws. This is disgusting. I'm sure it's happening in other places besides Australia. In many places, there just aren't laws against these dolls. You could go a couple different directions about how you feel about these childlike dolls. Some of them are roboticized. Some of them are just very realistic looking, unmoving dolls. And some people say this is a good way to keep pedophiles from predating children, right? And some others say that it is sort of encouraging them to, because it's so realistic, and then they may sort of blur the line between like what's the doll and then when does it become a human, and so you could go wherever you want with that. It is contentious. But it's disgusting if a place has decided that they want nothing to do with this in their country, and then you get around it by selling just the parts and then people assemble it. We do this with all sorts of things. We see it a lot of times with guns and weapons and this type of thing. And now we're seeing it with child sex dolls in Australia. So thanks, China. That's China. Oh, Christine Lagarde, the European Central Bank president, has what she says is good news about their digital currency situation. She says about the digital euro, the European Council has asked us to accelerate the process so that we can roll out the digital euro as early as possible. We want cash to be in the form of the digital euro. We'll be able to pilot the digital euros of 2027, and it will be a formal rollout in the whole of Europe in 2029. So they're committed. They said it was actually this year. It wasn't. They were saying then it was 2026. It's not. Now they're saying 2027 at least, and like hardcore, it's done, and everyone's going to be using it by 2029. It's unfortunately potentially true. I mean, we saw how quick they went and did COVID. We saw Agenda 2021 was like not happening, and then all of a sudden it all happened. So it is possible that they've got something planned to kind of force people to do these digital currencies. We'll see. Remember, it's always up to you, of course, whether you do it or not. But I would never go with a national or central banking currency, those central bank digital currencies, or European Union or the US or any of these places. Bitcoin, it's about it. And of course, you can do Solana and then turn it into the independent media coin that Corey and the gang have launched that I'm also connected with. Fantastic, right? I like Ethereum, even though a lot of people are mad at Ethereum right now. There's a few things I think are worth potentially your. I'm not an investment person. I'm not suggesting you do any of this. I can't advise you on that, but that's what I would be interested in. If it were me, it would never be a central bank digital currency or a currency that's connected to a nation or a central bank. So that's what they say is coming, and that we're all going to be using it. Would rather we all be using Bitcoin. We'll see. German special police forces have arrested a Syrian man who planned a bloody terror attack in Berlin. So that's cool. Sometimes they do stop these people before they actually commit their heinous crimes. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of stabbings and other really horrendous crimes especially in Europe and the UK in the past week. But in this one case, it was at least prevented from happening. So we can celebrate that win. China's army has conducted amphibious landing drill featuring several robo-dogs as frontline scouts. There's only a couple places in the world where China would want to do amphibious landing, and we're one of them. The United States is one of them. This was one of the worries when we had all of the container ships off the coast of the US, and 100% of them were from China, and there was just conglomerating more and more and more of them. China hates us. They would love to take us down, take us over. They talk about it all the time. It's one of their stated policies. And here they are showing how effective they might be with drones, with these robotic dogs, and combined with troops, even in an amphibious landing, like it would require if they were going to ever invade the US. They also have often had lots of troops and people being trained right on our northern border with Canada, because Canada is communist China, essentially, and at the... apparently doesn't care about the threat of China and the Chinese Communist Party. So that would also be a problem. And our southern border may be a lot more shored up than it was under Biden, but I don't know for sure exactly what's going on down there. Mexico isn't our good friend either. So potentially we could have a border invasion going on. Potentially at the same time, you may remember that last week we talked about Russia's tsunami causing nuclear attack that would not only cause a tsunami, which in itself would be so damaging, but that tsunami would carry radioactive waste with it, which would then be coating all of the territory in which the tsunami hit. And so imagine the combo if Russia and China were in on it together, of hitting us with this tsunami causing torpedo, and then China comes in and rolls in our beaches with all of these robo-dogs and drones. So hopefully we have the potential to dissuade that from ever happening. And then if it were to happen, we'd have the means to combat them, because one of the worst future timelines I've ever seen is the one in which China invades and occupies the United States. And I would like to think we've passed that timeline. Let's hope we have. Trump has threatened to wipe out Islamic terrorists in Nigeria if the killing of Christians continues. I hope he's serious. It is one of the most disgusting things to watch Islam take over Africa and to rape and murder and pillage and destroy in its wake. And in Nigeria is the current hotspot for that activity, Christians being the main target and other branches of Islam that aren't the dominant one, right? They're also under attack, but Christians more so. Trump also says his meeting with Xi Jinping was a great one and that it will lead to everlasting peace and success. And so again, I hope that's true. I would love to be in peace with China forever. Let's do that forever and ever, as Trump said. Erica Kirk rejects banning a camera in the courtroom for Tyler Robinson's trial. She says, quote, "Let everyone see what true evil is." This is in an interview she did with Jesse Waters of Fox News. There's a lot of stuff in there that especially, I think, answers the people who say that she is an uncaring widow and that she's just lining her pockets and all these things. And maybe she is, and maybe that's what you think too. But I think at least this has some, I don't know, people have just been like, why isn't she crying? And why is she just doing whatever? And she cries a lot in this interview. And I haven't watched it all or even much of it, to be honest. But I've just seen sort of some quotes from it and stuff. And so I don't know, if you're into that whole storyline, give it a go, I guess, and see what she says. But yeah, were we not going to have cameras? Do we not usually have cameras? I think we don't. I think we just get those really weird sketches. And those are so bizarre. It's like if the person hates the other person, their sketch is horrible. But if they love them, like Luigi Mangioni's just made him look like this buff, superhero or something. It's so weird. But yeah, maybe we'll get courtroom sketches for Tyler Robinson's trial or his alleged trial if you want to go there. The new news here: U.S. will not be sending high-level representatives to the COP30. Yep, we didn't go. Good. Best news. Love it. Exploding electricity and gas prices. The energy transition is driving Germany towards deindustrialization. Yeah. You know why? They destroyed their nuclear power plants. More than one of them. It's a small country. Now they are completely dependent on outside energy sources. They did that on purpose to themselves. And as I called that, each time they did it, it was going to end in disaster. Here it is ending in disaster. Poor people of Germany. The U.S. government is proposing a ban on future sales of TP-Link routers. That's a Chinese router. It is, of course, through their electronics that they have a massive surveillance in every single country they hate, the U.S. being one of them, and every politician's office and pocket and everywhere. So banning the use of those very specifically Chinese-owned routers is a great idea. We should have done it a long time ago. That's a win. Oh, this is very interesting. There's a fourth state of matter called plasma, they say, and yes, that's true. And that's been known. That's not news. But some scientists have found evidence of life and intelligent plasma in the upper atmosphere. Scientists describe it as pre-life, but it's actually connected to the afterlife or the broader reality, according to this person who tweets this open-minded approach on Twitter. On X. As the soul evolves, it says, it no longer needs the physical body. Plasma is one of the highest states of existence, and our species is heading towards this state. So they're actually, a lot of that is their own editorializing and sharing of their point of view, but they are citing this scientific study that says extraterrestrial life in the thermosphere, plasmas, UAP, pre-life, and fourth state of matter. And if you've listened to me for any amount of time, this is what I've said for more than 2 decades now about the spiritual ancestors, which I also refer to as the Wogies, who appear as light, literally, beings, often in the night sky, sometimes in the daytime sky, and also sometimes in very close range, right up in front of your face. And that those are interdimensional intelligences which can manifest via plasma is one way of looking at it. And so I agree with this scientific article that that's what's going on. It's not contained to the upper thermosphere, although they hang out up there a lot. But they could be anywhere. They could be anywhere in the universe. And they can very easily travel in very many different planes of existence and what we would call physical locations throughout the universe. And if you had come to my retreat this past summer in Crestone, Colorado, 100% of attendees there experienced profound and life-changing direct confirmation of exactly what I'm talking about. And by no means am I ever trying to convince anyone. I don't really care who thinks what, but the people who choose to can know what I'm talking about. And every single person at my retreat was able to do so. You can do it without me. Of course, it's something that exists in the universe. You're a person in the universe. Like, you can experience this without anybody. It might be easier sometimes to be with someone who already has understood these things and connects with them. They're psychic level beings of interacting on the psychic level, and so they can, read or hear your thoughts and respond to them directly and instantaneously, no matter the distance. And so somebody who's already sort of well-versed in that, like myself, who's experienced this literally thousands of times in my life of interacting with these intelligences, and now on a much more direct level, now that I channeled them as well, then it might be easier. And so, if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can always book a session with me. I can teach you how to do it even from afar. And if you're really interested in it, you might come to my retreat next year. So very interesting study, very interesting commentary on it, and definitely on the same wavelength. And for something completely different, JD Vance dressed up as his own meme for this past Halloween. We just had, I hope you had a happy Halloween. I did trick-or-treaters for the first time that I can remember, at least, ever doing. And so I got to see a bunch of kids in their costumes and give them some candy. It was very fun. I carved a pumpkin and my chickens loved it. And of course, if you follow me on social media, you already knew that. But JD Vance set the internet ablaze after he dressed up as his own meme for Halloween. And I don't know enough about this meme to really understand, but some curly-headed guy who's maybe a neckbeard is what people might call him, was like the meme of JD Vance. And so he took that and made it his costume. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Makes me like him. I know you want me to hate him, but I don't. Israeli company Electrion launches pilot in France of the world's first wireless charging highway for electric vehicles, with expansion plans for the US, other European countries, and Asia to help fuel the era of zero-emission mobility. If we had nuclear energy and that was it, this would probably be rad. It'd be awesome. If we had no slavery in the creation of batteries for these things, it would be cool, right? I'm not just opposed to electricity. I'm not opposed to no emission, mobilization. It'd be great. But we don't have these things figured out. We don't have enough electricity. We're already in dire straits as far as energy goes. So until we figure that out, this is a ridiculous plan. If we can get our batteries without slave labor, if we can get it by also enriching the people who are a part of that process, and not just raping the land, if we can get it without destroying the environment, and if we can do it with energy that's actually clean, like nuclear is, then great, let's try that, fine. But holy Christ, you can't just do it this way and just destroy everyone and everything in the process. It's disgusting. So, yeah. Federal judge ordered the Trump administration to continue funding food stamps during the government shutdown. I don't think they have. I think that was just sort of a Hail Mary, like they were going to. You don't ever really have to do what a judge tells you to do. You can continue to appeal it, perhaps to infinity. I think we've seen that over and over again. I think everyone knows that. So, I don't know. People are pissed about it. They really want it to happen. And I don't know. I just keep seeing people sharing this, and maybe you've shared it out of the goodness of your heart, but I'd like you to reflect on it. People keep sharing this list of resources. If you're hungry, here's a list of resources. And it's hilarious to me because, again, I'm actually on food stamps right now. They just gave them to me. I didn't even ask for them. I fit the requirements. It's not like a fraudulent thing. I just didn't ask for them. They just gave them to me because I asked for Medicaid. But so I have food stamps. I've been hungry so many times in my life. I've gone to food banks uncountable times. When I was little, we didn't have food often. It was a problem. So if you think I don't know, you're wrong. And the people I see posting this, mostly haven't known that level of hunger. And you don't understand how crafty people get when they're actually hungry. If you are actually hungry, nothing will stop you from eating. If you are actually hungry, you already know every single potential place where you can get food, period. And if you're not actually hungry, you don't need to know. So when you're sharing these resources and you yourself never needed them, you're sharing them to people who also don't need them. And then you're pretending like you knew better than them where to get food. Are you serious? And the people you see who are pretending not to know where to get food, well, they're not actually hungry. They're just used to being taken care of, and they're upset that they're not being taken care of now. They're not hungry, or they would already know. And I know that because I lived it and because I've known many hungry people in my life. And I've also known many people who aren't hungry, but will take your benefits if they can get them. So if you don't understand that, I'm sorry, but it's pretty arrogant to share this list of resources as though it matters, as though someone needed you to do that. And I would hesitate to say that anyone actually thinks that anyone needed them to do that. Did you think that someone was going to look at your social media and be like, oh, thank God, now I can eat? Because in their hand or in front of them, they have the entirety of the internet. And they could definitely find all these resources on their own. But for some reason, your social media was the place where they were going to find it. Because I would say that if you shared this, what you actually meant was, hey, look at me, I'm a good person. You didn't actually mean, hey, I really hope that you know where to find food. Some part of you may have told yourself you meant that, but that's not what you meant. What you meant was, look at me, I'm a good person. It's a virtue signal, and that's all it is. And it's okay. It's okay if you fell into that, and now you're sitting here going, maybe that's true. And it's okay if you think I'm an awful, horrible person for saying so out loud, and you hate looking at yourself and you refuse to admit your own faults. That's cool. We all do that too. But if you're really honest and you want to grow, you might look in the mirror and you might see that about yourself. You might go, yeah, why would I think that I would be the reason why somebody would know how to eat? It's worth asking yourself. It's worth investigating who you really are. The AI boom is driving the US GDP growth. AI accounted for over half of growth in the first half of the year. That's probably not going to slow down. We're probably going to see that increase, whether you like it or not. Trump says it is not true that he's decided to strike Venezuelan military sites. So the conflict with military or with Venezuela continues, but he says he never intended that or isn't going to do that. So it's interesting. It was reported that he had said that, and that was taken as fact. The FBI reportedly thwarted a potential terrorist attack in Michigan aimed at over Halloween weekend. We heard a lot about this. I don't think we got many details about it. There was some sort of chat group that was infiltrated. They made references to Pumpkin Day and Halloween targets, and so that was thwarted, and whatever it was they had planned was not carried out. So if that's true, we can call that a win. Senior Trump appointees Stephen Miller, Marco Rubio, Kristi Noem, and others have relocated their homes to U.S. military bases for safety. That's extreme. And probably warranted. Again, we've seen how murderous the left is. We've seen how okay with murder they are. We've seen how even elected officials being openly pro-murder isn't a problem for them. And so, yeah, I probably would too. It's an escalation that doesn't look great for society or our political future. But if it were me, I'd do the same thing. And finally, the Trump administration is considering airstrikes on military facilities in Venezuela. Oh, we already said that's not true. So that is actually the end of our news for the day. That's it. That's what we got. Some good wins. Remember to not buy into the rat catching the bat propaganda that might be about to flood everyone and everything. Hopefully, just by calling it out and people kind of paying attention to it, we've shifted it away from the potential, vector by which they were about to infect the minds of everyone for maybe Plandemic 2. Hopefully we don't have Plandemic 2 at all. That's the ideal. Remember to spend your time imagining all of the ways that things could potentially work out in the best way for everybody on Earth. Remember that your imagination is a tool you should be using to create goodness rather than worry or fear about a future you can't possibly know. You can't possibly know it. You can have really good guesses, and that's fine. You can be aware of high potentialities, and you can sort of safeguard against them to your best ability, and that's fine. That's a good way to use your intellect and logic. And otherwise, you want to let go of all of the negative conjectures and projections and imaginings you have about the future, and instead use that powerful tool of your imagination to imagine what it would be like if everything works out for the best. We call it pronoia, not paranoia, but pronoia. You're using your mind for the benefit of all. It also helps you feel better. And it's true that in your immediate surrounding, things are probably pretty good, true, and beautiful. So stick with that energy and it will carry you through. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Glued to them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The pomp proceed as mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.